All right, everybody, I am back with a brand new DC update. And we have a lot to go over today. A lot. You had James Gunn in an interview yesterday, and he gave out some tidbits in regards to the DCU. And just some of the stuff he said, we're going to look at some of it today. And in one particular quote, I want you to pay attention, and I'll mention this when we get to the slide, how he continually says, I. It is all about James Gunn. James Gunn right now is fulfilling some kind of childhood fantasy of what he envisions DC to be. He's been given the keys to the kingdom, and he's doing all what's up in his head, not what the fans want, not what DC deserves. And right now on Rotten Tomatoes, you do have Creature Commandos. It has a pretty high score. And I want to point something out about Rotten Tomatoes. First of all, they're not a good gauge. Critics rarely ever coincide or agree with the audience. Okay, it's very rare that ever happens. And with the audience, you have to understand that the people reviewing stuff on Rotten Tomatoes, they're not the average moviegoer or TV watcher. They are people who specifically like to go on and review stuff. So that does not represent the general public. And something like Creature Commandos, to start off the universe this way, it's the most ridiculous way to start off a universe. And then you're going to have all the Gunn people coming out and say, just wait till Superman, just wait. It's always just wait until this gets released. Just wait until this gets released. And I got to tell you, Creature Commandos, and some people pointed out some things that I didn't even pick up on that were crazy in regards to Creature Commandos. And if you haven't seen that review, you're going to want to go watch it and then come back to this video. Because, one, the person that Rick Flag was having intercourse with was a minor in the show, which is disgusting in of itself. And on top of that, you also had the Bride of Frankenstein. She also made love to the doctor who made Frankenstein. And he was a real person. She was a corpse who was brought back to life. And it's just weird stuff. And like I said, this is all the stuff that goes on inside James Gunn's mind. Now, some people said, well, you haven't read Creature Commandos. No, I haven't ever read Creature Commandos. But here's what I will tell you. I have never read anything DC related in the 40 years I've been reading DC that has people having intercourse in the other room and somebody hearing it as they're making grunting noises and furniture bouncing up against the wall, or let alone have full-on nudity in it and this kind of stuff. Like, it's not DC. It's not what DC is. And people are like, well, it's okay because it falls in line with Kite Man and it falls in line with Harley Quinn that's on Max. I don't watch those either because it's got the same kind of humor, and those are not true representatives. It's not a true if I can even talk here. It's not truly representative of those characters in comics. All right? It's just not. And for anybody to sit there and say, well, because they did this, it's okay to do this. That's not the DC brand. It is not what DC is. It's not the DC brand, period. And again, I think it's ridiculous that they gave the keys to the kingdom to James Gunn. It's going to continually boggle my mind till the end of time. But let's take a look at the stuff that I grabbed, because there is a lot to go over. So let's get started. First up, The Penguin is the third most popular DC show, or TV show of 2024 according to IMDb. And this was the best thing that came out of DC this year. There is no question about it. And it was the thing that James Gunn pretty much refused to promote. Nothing like he promotes his Creature Commandos, which is very telling since he is the CEO of DC. And he will sure take credit for this show, but he sure didn't want to help promote it. And this is by far better than anything James Gunn has ever put out. Now, James Gunn posted this the other day, and this is pretty cool. It is introducing DC Studios Showcase, the official podcast, your one-stop destination for all things DC official and DC Studios. Now, this I am looking forward to. It is a podcast that is going to happen every other Friday. And I will probably do a recap and talk about these episodes as they get released. I don't know how long they'll be. But they're going to be available anywhere where you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple Music, all of those different places. So this will be twice a month, and, well, basically every other Friday. So sometimes it'll be three Fridays in a month. It just depends on where Friday falls. But the best way to think about it is every other Friday. So I am looking forward to this. This will be kicking off shortly. Maybe even happen today for all I know. Now, Sammy posted this, and I thought this was perfect. It says, you could be a DC fan who is also a fan of Snyder. And that's where I fall. The same way you're a fan of Donner, Burton, Nolan, Schumacher, and other DC directors. But not according to Gunn people. If you don't like Gunn, you're automatically a Snyder cultist. And that's what freaking just, it cracks me up to see the way they're behaving online. It's the craziest thing in the world. Someone posted, James Gunn is going to save DC. And they pointed out, that's what Jeff Johns fans said, and Whedon fans or whatever, and Hamada fans. They all said it. And none of those guys were the savior, and I don't think James Gunn is going to be the savior either. Sil Abdul posted this. Gunn's previous DC efforts prior to his new DCU are considered light canon. This was Gunn's quote. Yeah, they're light canon. Peacemaker is pretty straightforward, with the exception of the appearance by a certain group, the former DCEU's Justice League at the end. And then he laughs, because he doesn't want anything to do with the DCEU. They don't exist yet, James Gunn points out. But the rule is, if we mention something from the past in one of the new DCU shows and movies, then it happened. So that's the way we're dealing with it. So again, there's no reboot. They're not going to do any explanation as to why things have changed. They're just going to do it. And what's crazy about this is, again, he laughs after he mentions the Justice League because he thinks the DCU's Justice League is ridiculous. That's not his version of what he thinks this universe should be. And this does point that they are going to do, that there hasn't been a Justice League yet. He said it right here. So there is no Justice League. Even though we're in a world of heroes, there has been no Justice League yet at all, period. And so they have yet to be put together. So we're probably going to see the formation of that during the DCU, but maybe we won't. It just depends. James Gunn, when discussing Superman, he did a Hollywood Reporter interview, and he said, honestly, from the bottom of my heart, David Corenswet is going to freak everyone out with how great he is. He is one of the best actors I've ever worked with, and he could do everything. The man is incredible. And yes, I hope his performance is this good. I really do. But James Gunn was also the one who said The Flash was one of the greatest superhero films ever, and it simply wasn't. And so I don't necessarily trust what James Gunn says. What he says and what's reality are two separate things entirely. And so we'll see when this movie comes out. I will grade it on a Superman film all by itself, regardless of who did it. But if it's not up to snuff, I will certainly say so. And we have more to discuss in regards to Superman coming up. James Gunn on Peacemaker Season 2, also from The Hollywood Reporter. Season 2 of Peacemaker is also going to take people by surprise. We take a very different route than the first season, and it's a really magical story that people are going to be blown away by. So we'll see when it gets released. Again, these are all projects that it boggles the mind that they even went forward. There should have never been another Peacemaker. There should have never been a Creature Commandos. These aren't the characters that DC fans are asking for or even want, and the general audience is not going to flock to these characters, period. And again, this is something that Grace Randolph made a point about. In her review, YouTube personality Grace Randolph doesn't understand why the Suicide Squad has 2 spinoffs. It's the perfect example why a creative shouldn't be a CEO. The Suicide Squad didn't capture the attention of casuals. Only James Gunn diehard fans liked it, which is 100% true. And this is something that I have tried to articulate in my videos, and one thing I don't talk about often, but everyone talks about how awesome the Rotten Tomato score is by critics and fans for the Suicide Squad. The fact is, not many people actually saw it. At the time, HBO Max had a very small fan base, and the people that did see it, it didn't stream all that well, even though people say it will. It was one of the best streaming things of that year, but you have to remember that was during a pandemic and people were watching a lot of stuff at home. So they certainly didn't go to the movies to go see it, and the only reason a lot of people saw it on HBO Max is because they already had it and it was something to watch, not because people really wanted to watch it. And the people that go to review things, they're not the general audience, guys. They're just not. And I'm glad she made this point because it is mind-boggling that the worst performing projects are the ones they get to continue on, which is just, again, it doesn't make any sense. Not logically and not financially in any sense. Now, somebody posted this, and I thought this was 100% on the nose. If you look at Creature Commandos, Rick Flag Sr. and the Princess look like James Gunn and look like his wife. And so the fact that in the cartoon they made her a minor, this goes back to what I was saying before. Again, it's like James Gunn's fantasy. He's putting it on film for everybody to see, which is, quite frankly, weird. Now, this is something that is disappointing, and I still am going to do my Superman and Lois review on the final episode, the finale of the show, as well as the series as a whole. I just haven't had time this week. Things have been very, very hectic. But it says showrunners for Superman and Lois planned a Super Family versus Darkseid arc, which I think would have been phenomenal to see. But again, we were robbed of this, all because James Gunn got the keys to the kingdom. Now, Discussing Film had a review for Creature Commandos, and this was their headline. It says, James Gunn's Creature Commandos may feel a bit repetitive. Really? You think? And rushed towards the end, but it's still a vibrant introduction to the new DCU. Well, it's definitely not vibrant, I will tell you that. It's disgusting, it's demented, and it's from the mind of James Gunn. That's all you need to know. And again, this is in line with something like it's even more in line and goes beyond what Peacemaker did or what the Suicide Squad did. This is James Gunn completely unleashed. That is for sure. Now, according to the Hollywood Reporter, James Gunn is currently, and by the time I've got this up, that they were doing another screen test for Superman. So they did one, they made some changes, they're doing another. Now, this is very telling, guys, and I do honestly believe that James Gunn has put the Batman trilogy or the Batman into deep freeze because of what he's doing. And this is Robert Pattinson talking about this production. And it said, Robert Pattinson on the production timeline for the Batman trilogy. He said, I could genuinely be retiring by the end of them. And that's where we're headed, guys. It has been 5 years since the first movie started production. So if this one starts production now, it will release 5 years from the other one. And the longer we go, the longer that's going to be. And that's not usually how these sequels work with these superhero things. You want to get those stories out. And it is getting to be a long time at this stage, guys. And we're going to see something that James Gunn said about the Batman here in one of the stills that I grabbed. And again, it's going to show you and back up what I'm telling you about James Gunn probably holding it up because of something that he desires. And so we'll take a look at that when we get to it. Now, this is one of the things that I thought was cool at the CCXP. They gave you a better look at some of the merchandising for the Superman film. And I really like this shirt. If the movie's good, I will actually pick this shirt up. But I am not supporting the DCU, and I am not supporting this movie until I know it's good. I'm not just going to go buy a bunch of merchandise just because I like the character. Because if this ends up being a terrible rendition, I'm not going to be happy with the stuff that I purchased. And I felt that way about Robert Pattinson's Batman. The only thing I own from the Batman is the car, the Hot Wheels, the car. I actually have it here in the studio. And I have the more advanced Lego set of the car for the Batman. And I ended up getting the 80th anniversary Batman set that had all the Batmans in it from all the films, and he's in there. But outside of that, I don't own any of the toys. I didn't get any merchandise from the Batman because I just didn't think it was something that I was all that excited about. I didn't want to help. It's not something I would want to promote pretty much. Now we have Frank Grillo also talking about David Corenswet. And Frank Grillo on why David Corenswet is the real deal as Superman. With David, there's something very Christopher Reeve about him. And I don't like that statement because I don't want it to be like something in the past. He encompasses this aura. There's something about this guy. I don't know if I could articulate it, but I was like, oh, this guy is Superman. which is great. These creatives and the people involved are going to continually talk this movie up. That's their job. But whether it ends up being truly like that or not is a whole other story. We'll have to wait until it gets released. But Creature Commandos does not leave me with a lot of hope. Here's some more merchandise for Superman. Again, I really like the silver. Even the regular logo looks pretty good. And I didn't get a copy of it, but on the other side of this mug, the main mug, if you turn it around, it does show Superman flying up. It's kind of a silhouette of him, which is pretty cool. So the cup is pretty neat as well. But again, I wouldn't purchase this unless I know the movie is actually good. Here you go. Here's some more look. Here's a few more looks at what they have at the CCXP. Now, somebody asked James Gunn, there has been some reports on Twitter that your Superman trailer will be released December 16th. Is this true? And if not, can you please tell us? He said, nope, it is not going to be released on December 16th. So that date is out. So we don't know when this is going to get released, but everybody does expect it in December. Some people are assuming it's going to drop on Christmas Day, which I think would be the wrong time to release it. James Gunn just can't... I'm going to hold my thoughts on that until a later date. I will talk about my thoughts on that if it does get released on Christmas Day. But until then, I don't want to make too many assumptions. All right, guys, so let's see what's next. James Gunn revealed a new DCU project was greenlit last week. He said, it happened with another thing that was greenlit last week that I can't even talk about yet. So 2 more projects were greenlit last week, which means they have a script that they like and that they're ready to go. So 2 more projects are going to be on the way. We will see when he announces them. Now, here is why I think the Batman is in development hell. James Gunn revealed at one point he thought of bringing Robert Pattinson's Batman to the DCU. But I'm committed to both telling stories in the DCU and Elseworlds stories. I want the freedom to tell Elseworld stories. But yet it doesn't seem like he really wants that to happen. Again, I do not think Reeves is the reason why the Batman 2 has not been greenlit yet or in production yet. I do believe it has to do with James Gunn. There were reports a long time ago that he almost tried to force Reeves to bring his Batman into the DCU. Gunn does like to take credit for other stuff. I pray that the Batman stays separate from what James Gunn is doing. And now I could see why Ben Affleck also said he wouldn't do anything for James Gunn's DC. I think they saw what they were doing, and they were like, yeah, this is not the direction they would want these stories to go in. And so that does not bode well for the average moviegoer. James Gunn on talking more about the DCU. He says, the DCU is not telling this one story about this big bad. So from that, don't expect to have Darkseid. Don't expect to have any major villains that are, Justice League needed type characters. He said this is about a connected universe. We are world building. We're not story building. Well, that goes against what James Gunn said in the past, because he said it was all about the story. He said, we're not writing one story that has a beginning, middle, and end. It's much more like Star Wars and Marvel in that respect. And those are not good projects to... I will tell you that Star Wars is completely in the toilet, although I will have my Skeleton Crew review up this weekend, and Marvel is in the toilet as well, and we don't know if they're going to get back on track or not, but it's not looking good. And before they had billed this that they were going to be telling a story that, in fact, they had said that Lanterns was going to be the kickoff to the big storyline that was going to resonate through the entire DCU. And that doesn't sound like that's happening anymore, especially with some of the revelations about the Lanterns show. James Gunn reveals he spoke with Ryan Reynolds after getting the DC job. I was like, you coming back? He said it jokingly. He was like, get the F out of here. And I believe he did say that. I do know that Zack Snyder was at one point going to try to get Ryan Reynolds to come back, and I believe under Zack Snyder he would have come back. But not with the way they're turning everything into a joke, and I agree with Ryan Reynolds. Stay far, 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 far away. James Gunn on if Booster Gold is ready to shoot, and Kumail Nanjiani, the rumors. He said, we're not quite there yet. The scripts aren't quite where I want them to be. We're not going to shoot until I'm happy with the script. And this is exactly what I was talking about. He doesn't ever say we like him and Peter. He doesn't say we like Pam Abdi, Mike DeLuca, and Zaslav talking about all this. It's just him and Peter. And it sounds like Peter is not involved in anything. It's where I want them to be, when I'm happy with the script. What kind of notes are he giving to these filmmakers? Is he the one telling them to put in all of these, jokes that teenagers make and disgusting juvenile humor? Like, I do believe this is all resonating from James Gunn himself. James Gunn says Creature Commandos is a soft intro of the DCU. I just like the idea of a soft intro to our universe, which is metahumans exist, monsters exist, magic exists, and incredibly complicated political situations exist. So far, I'm not seeing anything, incredibly complicated political situations. In fact, it was very light on the story and the villain in those first 2 episodes. We'll see how it ends up, but so far the first 2 episodes were nothing to scream about. They're not great. James Gunn provides an update on the scripts for Brave and the Bold, Booster Gold, and Waller. He said, they're not quite where I want them to be yet. So he was talking about all 3 projects, and again, it's all about where he wants them to be. I would love to see the notes that he is passing on to these creatives, because again, this was supposed to be the studio that allows their filmmakers to do their things. James Gunn cannot and should not have a say in everything. Now, this is a big thing that James Gunn had to come out and say, and I really, really, really hope this is true. I am not one of those that hopes Superman fails. I have very little hope that it will succeed, but I'm not one of those who wants it to fail. I would love to see an amazing Superman story on screen. James Gunn says Superman is not an ensemble movie. At the middle of everything is Clark, Lois, and Lex. It's about these 3 characters. I really, really hope that is true. I thought this was very telling. This is exactly the situation. It says this will always be remembered like the time where Sony managed to bring 3 Spider-Men together in one film, breaking records at the box office. But Warner's, on the other hand, fired its 3 Superman because it needs space for the new one. That's how a lot of people see this, guys. It is very, very telling. Also, it was announced today that The Joker 2 ends its theatrical run, earning $206.1 million globally, one of the biggest disappointments of the year. Almost $800 million less than the first film. Think about that. The DC brand has been damaged, for sure, by the studio. All right, guys, so there you have it. Another huge DC update. And I have a feeling that this news is going to continue to come out. I'm going to continue to do these videos and give my commentary on it. And when something good actually happens, I am going to praise it until I'm blue in the face. But I have yet to see anything that gets me excited for what DC is as a brand, what DC should be, and where the general audience is going to grasp onto this stuff. And you could have people say, well, he was great with Guardians of the Galaxy, but yeah, that was a fluke because that was at the time where Marvel was at its peak, and they brought in him to direct Guardians of the Galaxy. And because of what I saw in Guardians of the Galaxy and everything, I was excited when the Suicide Squad came out. And when I finally saw the movie, I was like, this has got to be one of the worst. To me, it's like the second worst DC movie outside of Birds of Prey. I was really disappointed with the Suicide Squad. It was not fun. It was not entertaining. It wasn't what I was expecting based off of what he's done. And so I got to tell you guys, I don't hold a lot of hope. I do not hold a lot of hope for the future, but we will see. Like I said, if stuff ends up being good, I will praise it until I'm blue in the face. But there's my update for the day. I will be back for sure this weekend and talk about Superman and Lois, and I will be back to talk about the Skeleton Crew for Star Wars. And we will see you guys on those videos and also on my next DC update. I do appreciate it. We'll see you guys later. Take care.